I am so excited. Only one day left until the official release of the Outer Worlds 2, and I finally get to make my official I told you so. The Outer Worlds 2 has sold 0 copies video. Oh, I am excited because this thing is picking up heat. That's right. Typically, I am the only person talking and yapping about how the Steam charts look bad, how the pre-orders are not matting out, and how the companies are lying about their financial statements. But now, I mean, I have seen on Twitter multiple people point out how bad this thing is looking, and it is looking pretty bad. But there is actually one thing now that the Outer Worlds 2 is looking better than Avowed. Yes, previously nothing happened. But now there is one thing that officially the Outer Worlds 2 is performing better at than Avowed. I know, it's hard to believe. And well, honestly, if the Outer Worlds 2 gets more than 20k players, it's possible now. Let me explain why. There's not going to be a lot to explain, but it's pretty interesting. So, the Outer Worlds 2 is done by the failed disgraced company called Obsidian Entertainment, the people who accidentally put lightning in a bottle and called it Fallout New Vegas, and destroyed Bethesda's reputation for generations to come. Kinda based, not gonna lie. But beyond that, they have done nothing right. And that nothing right typically is in the form of the Outer Worlds 1, which was a massive failure well, it wasn't a financial failure, but it was a pretty massive failure in the term that people didn't like it. It was safe, it was nothing like New Vegas, the gunplay was bad, and in general, kind of forgettable slop. Also, by the way, people are currently really, really upset about the fact that the Outer Worlds 2 is giving the opportunity for people who got the pre-order to get a flaw that's called consumerism or something like that. Bro, you do not get to make fun of people spending $70 on, well, actually $80. It's more like $80 than $70. $80 on your stupid slop game when you yourself put it for $80. You don't get to make fun of capitalism because you are doing the purest form of greed that there is at this point. So, completely tone deaf in my opinion, but that's a slightly different story. In any case, the Outer Worlds pre-orders early access has already been done, and the initial start was horrible. After the absolute disaster that was Avowed and its start and failure, a lot of people were not looking good in the Outer Worlds direction, and that shows because the initial wave was 7k. Yes, when the pre-orders, early access for the pre-orders was launched, 7k. That is that is 3,000 people less than Avowed. That's almost 50% less people that are interested in this game, which is horrible. And the next day, well, it didn't look good. It honestly, the next day's graphic was very strange because you had this one point where the numbers went up very, very little, and I thought that it's already tapering out, but this proved the graphic that, 19 UTC is the time frame where the maximum should be, like I have always said. Because this thing changed a little bit. For a lot of games, the real time frame was roughly from 3 now to like 5, and then it peaked out. But it seems like maybe that was just some kind of random blimp on the radar. And now we're back to the typical peak is 17 UTC if you're looking at Steam charts. And then it starts to taper off around 10. As you can see, it's slowly starting to decline there, well, about around 8. And, until 12, and then it starts tapering off really, really fast. Which is not the case. In this case, it's a pretty shallow decline. So, I think the Outer Worlds 2 has already experienced its biggest fan uprising and power buying moment here. After this, I think it's all downhill here. And you need to understand that, well, if you look at this chart, I can't. What's with Steam charts? They're so bad for some reason. If you, I can't. Bruv, seriously, come on. There we go. Good enough. And the second day was actually bigger. Sunday. So I thought that Sunday is gonna be, well, maybe it may be 30% higher than like was Avowed, because for the first day, for the Saturday, the Outer Worlds 2 chart completely mirrored the Avowed one, literally percentile and percentile. But currently, the strange part is the Outer Worlds 2 is actually having has a 50% higher Sunday peak from its start than Avowed did. Avowed's peak was not that impressive. Like, look at this. Avowed's peak was 30%. 30%. This peak is like 75% roughly better than that peak, which is honestly kind of impressive. Now, granted, I do think this is the situation that it's just super fans. That this does not mean that Avowed is gonna succeed. That the Outer Worlds 2 is gonna succeed. I think there's a legitimate chance that it still doesn't get 20k players even. But again, I'll remind everyone, you need to understand, in before all of the comments about, sir, the third, but it's on Game Pass has hit the towers comment happens because no one cares about Game Pass. Game Pass is garbage. It represents nothing, and it's a minor. It's the minor representation of players. By the way, there's this. I don't know. I honestly look at it as a copy paste, or maybe it's bots. But there's this comment that gets said so many times on Twitter. I have seen it so many times, and it goes something like this. I'm not paraphrasing, but this is kind of the message. There has never been any evidence to prove that most people are not playing these games on Game Pass. That Steam represents the majority of players. Well, first of all, we actually have evidence of that because Steam represents roughly 60% of the player base, or at least 50 or something like that. But it's the majority. It is the majority. Second of all, we know Game Pass numbers time to time, and every time that we have had official statements from developers how many people are typically online at their game, we can estimate that the top 15 most played title on Xbox is at best 10k current players, which needless to say is not even a top 100 for Steam. And after that, it goes super downhill. And I'm saying top 10k best. Typically, it's around 4, as much as I can tell from all the articles that I have read about devs actually saying how many people they have on Xbox for a game and correlating the time periods. Because I have done that, yes. So, yeah, Xbox. No one is using Xbox. There's a reason it lost the console war. Because no one fucking wants it. So, yes, the dear person who is a super Xbox fan, Steam does represent everything the best. It is what it is. And even though the Outer Worlds has a surprising 50% increase, which is way better than Avowed's, I think it's gonna crash because it's just super fans. Now, granted, the funny thing is, this is a truth, but this is kind of a shitty truth. And it's the fact that people are saying that the Outer Worlds 2 is Avowed but way better. Technically, that's true because you need to know one thing if you didn't play Avowed. Avowed's combat was atrocious, and I'm not talking about the swingy swordy part of it, or shooty like boo boo stuff, or magic or whatever. Its combat was just super generic. If you chose to use a sword and a pistol, congratulations, you're using a sword and a pistol until the end of the game and nothing ever changes. Same for magic, same for this. The weapons that you chose from second one were exactly the same weapons. They felt the same, they did the same thing until the end of the game. And the Outer Worlds 2 is much better with that because the combat is better, because it's just gunplay. It's not a medieval fantasy, it's just gunplay. Which means by inherent definition is going to be better than Avowed, because Avowed shortcomings was the fact that there were no interesting ways to actually improve your combat other than just, hit bigger number. But the Outer Worlds 2 does that. So, while this is technically a truth, that doesn't make the game good. Yes, it's on a technical level, it's better than Avowed, but don't believe the people who are saying, oh, it's so much better than Avowed. No. Most people who have played this game and I have watched their reviews are still saying that I do not emphasize with a single dialogue option in the Outer Worlds 2. Every dialogue option is something I would not choose. And that does check out, that does make sense, considering we know that Avowed was a woke shit show, and well, the Outer Worlds 2 is kind of the same deal. I mean, we saw the companions, we saw the writing, we already know that the woke is a massive part of the Outer Worlds 2, sadly. But again, it is pretty impressive that the numbies here were kind of better. Now again, I haven't actually looked at this, and this is one a day before everything. Actually, no. Let's look at 2 days before everything, because, we had this major spike and then it's a loss. Is this the same for Avowed? Ooh, this is this, by the way. This is this. From 13k to 11k. That is, 15, yeah, let's round it down. 15% decline. Okay? And we have 11k to 8k. Oof. That is not good. That is way more than 15%, boys. So, the same stuff that this point is way more impressive because it got a 50% boost here while Avowed didn't. It also has a bigger drop off, which means that people probably cared less. And yes, it's a Monday, but Monday fun day, it is what it is. In any case, I think Avowed is going to be a disaster. I think it was a disaster. And Outer Worlds 2 is definitely already a disaster. Switch those two titles around, it is what it is. In any case, if you're wondering why the hell there's light there and why there's a cable going there, don't worry about it. It's completely legal and it's completely fine. Nothing is happening here. In any case, that's it. Can't wait for tomorrow where we get to absolutely demolish the Outer Worlds 2. Have a nice day. Bye.